So welcome all as you are joining us today on this very special occasion. I see many are still logging in, and as you're getting settled, we'd just like to make a short introduction to today's program. It is my privilege to open this week-long series of webinars on such an important day as the Mother's birth anniversary. And as you know, this series will continue until February 28th, Auroville's birth anniversary, and it's part of the Auroville Festival and hosted by Auroville Foundation in collaboration with LaGrasse Center USA. If we could please come together in a few moments of silence. So welcome again. And we are very honored to have with us today Dr. Jayanti Ravi, Secretary of Auroville Foundation. And Dr. Ravi, would you like to share a few words with us today?
Namaste. Good evening and good morning to everybody. We are extremely happy that on this very special day, as Radhi just mentioned, on Mother's birthday, we're actually beginning this very important series of interactions with people of great eminence who've lived, professed, and practiced what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother has bequeathed to us, taught us, and we're really thankful and welcome all of you. I also want to take this opportunity to share that for the first time, a humble offering at the lotus feet of the Mother is something that all of us felt on the occasion of not just Mother's birthday, but Auroville's birthday this whole week, and especially on the 150th birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo. This is something that we all felt we could in a very humble way try and begin and institutionalize it so it can happen year after year with her grace. This is being celebrated in the birthday week. It's a special time also to reflect and dedicate ourselves to this incredible expression of human unity in manifesting the audacious dream of a divine city of goodwill and harmony. The idea is also for all of us to seek and discover the cadences of harmony in this significant moment as we collectively move ahead towards realizing the highest aspiration that individually and collectively we all have. I want to express my gratitude to all those who made this happen, especially to Sri H.P. Rama. This idea was thought of a few weeks ago, or perhaps even less than that, and immediately, with complete alacrity and enthusiasm, he responded, and especially to Radhe and Vladimir, who've actually helped put it together, and also a very dedicated team here of Dev, Sindhuja, Joel, and all the eminent speakers who have made this possible. Thank you very much for accepting this and for being a part of this very special celebration. Thank you, Radhi. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. The Mother for us is not only a savior or a leader, she is an example of how to live our lives and how to think and to be. She is the force we all want to be turned into, serving her royal needs, surrendering to her grand powers, to be the best we can be. Auroville is the project of the Lord, says the Mother. Already in 1954, she expressed the ideal for the future society in her profound document, A Dream. Quote, "There should be somewhere on earth a place which no nation could claim as its own, where all human beings of goodwill who have a sincere aspiration could live freely as citizens of the world and obey one single authority, that of the supreme truth." And when someone asked her about her dream, saying, well, it is only a dream, she answered, quote, "Dreams of the Lord are more real than the realities of many." So to realize her dream, we all gather today in Auroville and from all over the world. We seek her presence with adoration and aspire to be worthy of her work, her love, her knowledge. So once again, we welcome all of you to this very, very, very special day and week. And we have with us today H.P. Rama, please welcome, and also our esteemed presenters, Aurelio, Dr. Alok Pandey, and Anu Legrand. As well, Dr. Ravi mentioned the team that's behind this event, many of us which will be moderators for the week. Moderators that will be joining us today or in other events throughout the week are Sindhuja Lagadesh, Joel Van Leder, Divyanshi, and Srijita Roy. And from LaGrasse Center USA, Vladimir Yasenko and myself, Radhe. So again, welcome all, Dr. Ravi, H.P. Rama, speakers, and moderators. So at this time, we are extremely pleased to have with us Aurelio from Svaram, whom you all know. And Aurelio will now open our week-long program with a collective invocation. I will turn it over to you, Aurelio.
Greetings from Auroville. We had a very beautiful meditation at dawn today, the city of dawn, coming through the deep and dark of the night and being greeted by an amazing mandala of flowers. I'm feeling moved actually at the onset of this week and this beautiful idea to bring our deepest aspirations together with a pragmatic sense of manifesting Auroville. I'm feeling like invoking the more rare aspect of the Divine Mother, the Ananda, to quote Sri Aurobindo, that mysterious and powerful ecstasy that flows from a supreme divine love. The Ananda that alone can heal the gulf between the highest heights of the supramental spirit and the lowest abysses of matter. I shall conclude then with a line just recently discovered from Savitri, which very interestingly mentions the city of splendid birth. I'm inviting everybody who is there and listening and participating possibly to tune in into the Bija mantra, what I'm saying of the integral yoga, which so much focuses around the Shakti and the surrender to the Shakti. The Bija mantra is basically Ma. It's the mother, calling that mother from an inner space, slowly from a humming space, opening into, surrendering into her force. You are the honey of my life, the essence of love, so sweet, so sweet, the nectar of God. Ourselves are citizens of that mother state, adventurers amidst earth's mist and fog, mud and stone. Still remember eternal sphere, and the high city of splendid birth.
Thank you, Aurelio. Absolutely beautiful. And a wonderful way to open today and the rest of this week. So we very much appreciate it. So as this day and this event is dedicated to the mother and her life, Dr. Pandey will now share with us how the mother is the bridge between the past and the future. Dr. Pandey is a well-known authority on Sri Aurobindo's and the mother's writing, and especially on the subject of yoga, psychology, education, and health. And we are grateful for his presence today. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you, Dr. Pandey.
Since the time creation has come into being, or if you may like to use the word becoming, there are these three forces which are constantly acting upon it. The force of creation, which keeps on building new and new forms, names, activities, tendencies, properties, propensities. Then the force of preservation, which tries to keep, it rises to a point, this creation goes to a point, and then it's preserved. And then the force of destruction, which takes away the past and brings in something new. But behind this play, we see another interesting play of forces. And that is, on one side, in creation, there is this power of love, which is pulling creation constantly upward, as if by a magnet. That magnet, of course, is Ananda, which runs as a sap in the very veins of creation, is constantly drawing itself up, up, up towards some grand culmination, supreme consummation, if you like to call it. And what that supreme consummation is very easy to understand if we take it that this creation is an act of the divine in its origin. Then the supreme consummation has to be that this creation has to become divine. It stands to logic. And in fact, this is the only logic, because if we say that there is nothing behind creation, then creation would not be. So there is this consciousness which is embedded within creation, is carrying it through a power of love toward the grand consummation, which is a divinization of each element of creation. On the other hand, creation is emerging from a state of utter denial of the very consciousness which is pulling it upward, denial of ananda, denial of life, denial of truth, what Sri Aurobindo has termed as the inconscient. And it is also exerting a pull constantly and pull downwards. And as creation comes up, it has a tendency to sometimes collapse back into the inconscient. Despite everything, thanks to the labor of love, it has been brought up to this level, what we call today as an awakened humanity. I won't use the word humanity because humanity is a multi-layered term, whether we like it or not. There is a humanity which is close to the animal kind. There is a humanity which has begun to think. There is a humanity which is more conscious. There is a humanity which aspires to go beyond man. So there are different layers of humanity. From here, this project takes a new turn. And the new turn is that now, up till now, creation has come out of inconscient without the conscious collaboration of the steps at which the evolutionary energy or the evolutionary power, or I prefer to call the power of love, was acting. And I'm not going into details about what that love is and how it works. But at a human level, it calls for a conscious collaboration. Why? So that the process can be hastened. And also because we may avoid these constant lapses back into the inconscient. What is called in Indian thought is a pralaya. So pralaya is that creation reaches a point and then the pull of the inconscient is such that it tends to draw it back. From a unitary point of view, we may say that it was not ready for the next leap. So the cycle goes on. But each time when creation emerges from the pralaya, the recovery is much faster. Now, in this whole process, there are some critical turning points, some crucial junctures. And at that point of time, a bridge is needed. It's as if creation passes through a narrow gorge. When its fate is being decided, it may lapse back or it may emerge through a narrow gorge into a wider space. And at that point of time, the divine himself takes a human body, which we know is embedded in a line of spiritual thought in India, which is the avatar. This thought is there even in Christian mysticism, but it has been lost. When Christ says, I am the way, basically he's referring to the avatar, because unlike a teacher, unlike a master who comes and gives us a technique, a method, which we must follow through a specialized way and find an exit door, the avatar comes to upgrade creation itself. Therefore, he becomes the way. And he becomes the way also because when a working has to be done in the very material field, so all evolution is on the basis of matter. And it is known as manifestation. From the spiritual point of view, all evolution is nothing else but a progressive manifestation. We use the word evolution because we just look at the outer phenomena. So at this juncture, if we look back 100 years back or a little more, we see that humanity was going through another kind of crisis. And we can see the great wars, the upheavals, the revolutions, and it's all written the first half of the previous century. And a few centuries before, one could see it all building up. And during that period when humanity ran the risk of once again going back into pralaya. And we know about the Second World War and many other things that were happening at the same time. That is the time when the avatar comes and he takes humanity through that little narrow gorge towards a new creation. This is the first task of the avatar, to steer humanity through this crisis, which outwardly looks like a crisis of events and circumstances. But one of the things that Sri Aurobindo beautifully reveals to us, both at an individual level, collective level, at Auroville level, at the world level, all crisis, which looks like a crisis of events and circumstances and situations, is at its bottom an evolutionary crisis. It calls for a leap in consciousness. And there are those who take the leap, and there are those who don't take the leap. Now, if those who take the leap, though that humanity which is ready, it transits from one zone into another. That's what the avatar comes to do. So, and this leap is not just in the inner consciousness. This leap is also in the very body. It's a leap like from animal to man. So the body itself begins to respond to higher forces, to the spiritual forces with immense implications. So the avatar of this age, the last avatar, as the mother called him, and as is we find narrated in various Indian scriptures, the Bhavishya Purana, for instance, are Sri Aurobindo and the mother who have come to take evolution one step further. And that step further may look like just one step, but it's a radical step further. That one step is, on one side, it can be simply spoken of as mind to supermind, man to superman. But what really it means is that mind is a divisive consciousness. It looks at things from an either or perspective. Things have to be either this or that. The mind, because it is divisive, always creates inseparable gulfs. The last of the gulfs is between matter and spirit, world and God. So when we turn to this world, we lose God. When we turn to God, we lose the world. This has been the story so far, because mind cannot. When we try to take to spiritual life through the mind, then we reach a door where mind tends to enter into an impersonality, vast impersonality. Call it Brahman, whatever we want to call it, the static poise of the divine. And when it comes back to the world, it doesn't know what this world is about. It's an illusion, probably it's a nightmare or some kind of dream. And then it sees it's not a very, it's a dream which is into the making up, beautifully how Radhiji just now said, it's a dream, yes. But whose dream is it? Who is the dreamer? So we don't go into that. We just see the dream. It's dream, something is making. And we all carry the dream, actually, the dream of the Lord. It's the dream of a perfect world, the dream of an ideal world where everything is beautiful, everything is true, everything is full of joy, everything is embedded with the instinct of harmony, unity, freedom. But when we look at the reality check, the dream appears to have gone awry, and we tend to look for an exit door. This is what has been the story of man so far. But for the first time, the mother says, no, this gulf can be bridged. This dream has come to a point where it can be realized. It is ready to precipitate into the outer physical life of man. And then she asked a question, a very interesting question. Are we ready? Are you ready? This is the question the mother asked. When we look at the series of her last messages after the formation of Auroville, incidentally, since we are doing it also in a backdrop of Auroville. So she gives a series of messages. She is the avatar. She has made the bridge, as we know, the bridge between mind to supermind. Supermind is a consciousness of unity. It's a consciousness of truth. It's a consciousness of that love which can experience unity in difference. Human love cannot. For human love, it is one person loving another. In the supramental intensity of love, it is not one person loving another, but the divine loving the divine through one form into another. This is the experience of supramental love. Supramental Ananda. Supramental Ananda is a manifold Ananda. In every little drop, it experiences the Ananda. In the commonest acts, in the smallest things, it experiences that Ananda. Supramental knowledge. Unlike a mental knowledge, which is very derivative besides, supramental knowledge is a knowledge by identity. One knows not because one has analyzed and it has gone through all that process, but one knows a thing by becoming that thing, because deep within that is the secret truth of our being. So what does the supermind do? It automatically reveals the divinity which is embedded in creation, and to come in contact with that divinity, it brings out our own divine self. One of the first effects of the supermind is that it quickens, as it were, the emergence of the psychic being more openly into the play, it opens the doors to a higher, wider consciousness so that man's consciousness, mind, heart, life, body begin to obey a higher law, the law of intuition, and intuitive sense, and intuitive knowledge, intuitive wisdom, before it can take the next leap. So when we look at those messages, we see very interesting series of messages. What is it that we have to do? Because it's a phase when there has to be a conscious collaboration. So conscious collaboration means that we have to make choices. Before this, animal doesn't choose what it wants to be. It is picked up. There is a logic behind it. There is a divine logic. It's not magic. Evolution is not magic, whatever it may appear. And then out of a certain kind of animal, the ape-like, certain apes are picked up and they get transmuted into humanity. But with human beings, because there is a conscious evolution, there is this choice. There is a conscious choice. And what is the choice between? Beautifully, the mother says, the choice is between truth or the abyss. Now, this is very interesting. And what is the abyss? She says very beautifully, what is the abyss and what is the truth? She reveals to us what is the abyss. Abyss is greed for money, lust for power, and fear. These three things constitute the abyss. And what is truth? Truth is a vast infinity. She says, don't try to define it, but be sincere. If you want to live it, it will emerge from within us. So truth is something which cannot be defined. The moment we define, we turn it into a religion, a narrow sect, creed, etc. And she always bids us to go beyond. And then she asks human beings, are you ready? This is the choice imperative. What is the choice? Truth or the abyss? And when we look at the mother from that angle, then it's not about her outer life, but the main work that she came to do. She has built the bridge, and to walk that bridge requires tremendous courage. And the greatest courage and heroism that the mother said that she demands of us or expects of us is to get rid of the ego. Most of the problems in human life, in fact, one may dare say almost all the problems of human life, even fear, the worst of impurity, is because of the ego. What does ego do? It puts us into a narrow shell, whether it's the shell of a standpoint, a viewpoint, an opinion, a way of life. We are accustomed to a comfort zone. We continue to live life in a certain way. We don't want it to change. But then change comes. It is bound to come because a new consciousness is already abroad upon earth. And as she said very beautifully, again, one of the messages, the future of the earth depends upon a change of consciousness. And the change is bound to come. It's bound to come. But it is left to men to decide whether they will collaborate with the change or the change is thrust upon them by the power of crashing circumstances. So we have to look at the mother from the way one looks at the avatar. Now, avatar is a dual phenomena, the human and the divine. But, there is a divine element in the divine mother. So, we can ask her for protection, for grace, and everybody has their own connection with her individually, universally. She is all these. But most importantly, she has taken a human body, a material body, so that a work can be done in matter, in the very material field, upon the body, so that a path can be opened through the very cells. There is a light, almighty powers which are shut inside the cells, but they are not released. The body is driven by habits. The body is driven by old ways of life. The body is driven by the mind's formulas, do's, don'ts, 100 things. But there is within the body the freedom of the infinite. The body can have that freedom of infinity. She comes to establish that in the body. And that is something unique, new. And that is how one has to look at her. Not, of course, she is the transcendent mother. She is the universal mother. She is the individual mother. But most importantly, she is the one who brings the new creation out of the folds of the unmanifest and has established it upon this earth, in this human soil, in this material soil. And this transmutation, this seed that she has sown in earth, will now blossom through the agency of man. Man's work is to become a bridge. And this bridge, she becomes assuming a human body. And all of us have to now, that truth that she has brought, translate it itself into our own lives. What does it require? Most importantly, it requires tremendous courage. There is something very fascinating about the mother, both mother and Sri Aurobindo. Something very amazing. One of the take home points that one, they could drop the past like this. The power of renunciation of a past for the future is something amazing. Look at Sri Aurobindo. He is on the peak of, the revolutionary movement, where he is regarded as he is the leader. One day he vanishes and people don't understand why he has done it. But he has done it because he sees there is a greater work. Another time, when, right when people are getting drawn, suddenly he vanishes, goes behind the scene, leaving the mother in front and Savitri in the hands of man. And when we look at the mother's life, how inspiring it is that she had all the possible realizations of yoga. She had the Buddhist realization. She was an adept in Buddhism. She had the realization of the yoga of the Gita, the Raj Yoga, all the Kundalini, the entire map, not just the 7 chakras, but 12 chakras and beyond. She had the experience of dying consciously and coming back into the body. Every possible occult experience realization, every possible spiritual experience and realization. When we look at the mother's prayers and meditation, one wonders that what is it that she doesn't have? And with all that, she had built a very fantastic mind system, one of the widest plastic system. It was there in Cosmic Philosophy. I don't know, now it's so difficult to find that book and have an English translation of it. But anyways, it's not necessary, because when she came to see Sri Aurobindo, she just offered it all. She sat at his feet. And while her husband was discussing with Sri Aurobindo whether this world is born out of desire or out of delight, and Sri Aurobindo would say out of delight, and he would insist out of desire, the mother is sitting at the feet of Sri Aurobindo and she says that entire thing dissolved. Can we imagine that she left all this past behind? What did she become? There is a word in Auroville Charter, willing servitor of the divine. What it means to be a willing servitor. She is a Yogeshwari, literally. When she is coming, the house of Sri Aurobindo is being prepared. A new bulb has come. And people are asking, who is coming in? There are whispers. Some great yogin from Europe. Europe has yogins also. It's not only yogin, the divine mother, Sri Aurobindo knows it. And there is a preparation going on. And when she comes, this great yogin, what does she do? She teaches the Indian disciples how to be in front of the Guru. Sign of the age, intellectual age. Many of them would sit in front of Sri Aurobindo with their feet on the table. Even with mother, Amrita says that, when he would talk to mother, they would be reading yogic sadhana, and if somebody saw them sitting on a chair next to each other, they would wonder who is teaching whom. And yet, by her own example, what was the example? She started sitting on the floor. She would clean her own room with broom. When the sari was torn, she would just patch it and wear it. And she would make no fuss about it, no bones about it. What work she was doing inwardly, that one can know now, thanks to the prayers and meditation, which she was not keen to publish. We have one experience and we talk about it. Fantastic. All our lives, I saw this, I had this. Divine Mother has every possible experience in a lab. Just go through a prayers and meditation. That's a autobiography. Minimum. There are much more. 4/5 of it is burnt away. And one wonders, with all these experiences and realizations, but outwardly, she is leading the life of a very normal, regular, ordinary human being. This is the sign of greatness. And in that state, when she comes, how she faces the past, not only inwardly, even outwardly. Coming from Paris and Japan, when she comes to India, starts living in a small little room, no room also for years, decades, she didn't have a room for herself. And she would not say, oh, it's so hot in India. Why? Because she wants to serve Sri Aurobindo, claiming nothing. You see, what is she written in Auroville? She has basically said about her own life, the way she has lived. I belong to no country, no civilization, nothing. Whom do you belong to? I belong to the divine. I don't speak on behalf of anybody, but on behalf of the divine. Look at that way. She is, when it is written, Auroville belongs to nobody in particular, but to everybody. It belongs to the divine. So she lived her life like that, belonging to nobody except the divine, whom alone she would obey. And that is how one becomes a servitor of the divine. No country could claim her. No civilization could claim her. No culture could claim her. She belonged to all these, and yet she transcended all this. So when she says this is the way, by her own life, she showed us how to renounce an immediate gain for the sake of a larger good, for the sake of a truth that we can see before our eyes. This is her way, to renounce the inner, all the so-called knowledge that we talk about, experiences, everything for the sake of nothing for herself. When we look at mother's life, another thing that strikes it, that nothing for herself, even a room, as I said, her room was made in somewhere, I think 1952 or 54. Otherwise, what is called as an interview room today was the mother's room. What was it? It was mother's room, means there was a couch where she could lie down, she could sit. There is a little partition in old times by an old fridge, and you have to pull the door if somebody needs a private conversation and there are people on the other side who are working. This is what she taught by her own example, life, how to serve the divine. Looking at the samadhis, she says, I don't want to be worshipped. Let them worship you. But for me, I have come here to serve and work. And that's why she says two very interesting things that the mother said, which her own life was an example, wonderful example. She says, the more I grow in the yoga, the further I go, I find that it is through work that Sri Aurobindo's yoga can be done best. She says that the more I grow, of course, there is a logic behind it, but I'm not going into that. Through work that Sri Aurobindo's yoga. And then another place she says, who can understand Sri Aurobindo? We may read books, we may give talks, but who can understand Sri Aurobindo? She says his teaching is vast as the universe. He is as vast as the universe, and his teaching is infinite. It's very interesting. When I had read it, I just wondered, she's saying teaching is infinite and he is vast as the universe. And then I realized the deep, profound truth. This teaching, the moment we try to put it into any slot, we have lost it. It is infinite. And he is as vast as the universe, is the very body of Sri Aurobindo, which contains the whole universe within him. I have wrapped the wide world in its wider space. So she says that how to understand him? She says the only way we can come a little closer to him is to love him and to give ourselves unreservedly to his work. So these are the two beautiful points that he showed us: to love the divine embodied in Sri Aurobindo and the mother. She would never say love me. She like that. That Sri Aurobindo had to say turn to the mother, and to serve the divine. There is a very beautiful prayer of the mother where she says, O Lord, I ardently aspire to know thee. But it doesn't end there. She says, to know thee so as to serve thee better. The more we know the Lord, the more we love him, because we realize that his love is beyond anything our human consciousness can imagine. And the more we know him, the more we can serve him better. Without knowing the Lord, we can still serve, but more often than not, we are likely to create more mess. Human beings have been doing that all the time. So this is a life and so much more. Let me close with this message today, which we received from the ashram, which is like a very concise biography of the mother. Some of Sri Aurobindo's, Mahavakyas are like that. So someone asked the question to Sri Aurobindo, when the moment mother comes as the leader of the human march, not just of the ashram, But leader of the human mass, Sri Aurobindo stepped behind and said, she is going to lead humanity. After all, who were there in the ashram? Representative humanity. So the moment she came, Sri Aurobindo writes a letter in perfect identification, not a letter, but a note. I am the Shakti of Sri Aurobindo. It's a whole note. And then at that point of time, that in response to queries, this number of letters came, which are now compiled as the series of 6 letters, The Mother, which is the first book which came out after the Arya. And it's so amazing that one suddenly feels a wide uplift. In Arya, we have the divine Shakti and all. Suddenly we have the Mother. And people asked, who is the Mother? So one of the questions was about the Mother, transcendent Mother. Our mind spins like that. Oh, it's okay. We are invoking the Mother. Mother worship is not new. Everybody in India knows about Shakti. So what is the big deal about Mother, whom we know as her name as Mother Mira? What is so special about her? And here is this letter of Sri Aurobindo, which is given as a message. There is one divine force which acts in the universe and in the individual, and is also beyond the individual and the universe, the 3 levels of being. All the Shakti within an individual, breathing, heartbeat, eating, digesting, walking, talking, listening, seeing. That Kena Upanishad, that we see through that, we hear through that, we think through that, understanding, feeling, willing, all this Shakti comes from one divine force. There is no 2 divine forces. Is it only within me? No, it is also universal, everywhere. What about the evil? Well, with man, this choice came up. He can choose either to be with the forces of retrogression of the past. That's what evil is. Or he can be with the forces of ascending evolution, that's where the good is. Good and evil are fixed things. A standard which was valid in the past becomes invalid as we move towards the future. So that's what was good at one point of time becomes evil. And there are plenty of examples of that, but not going into that. So universe, it is her power. And whatever enters into an evil tendency, she ultimately withdraws that from the universe and cleans it up. But she is not just individual and universal. She is also the transcendent Mahashakti who brings the Ishvara out of the state of, what shall we say, beyond being and non-being. Parabrahman. She brings the Ishvara out as Sachidanand. So she is that individual, universal and transcendent. The Mother stands for all these, all 3. The Mother stands for all 3. But now comes the important qualifier. But she is working here in the body to bring down something not yet expressed in this material world so as to transform life here. Divine can do everything without taking a body. After all, he conducts the affairs of the world hidden by his Yog Maya up above. Why does he need to take a human body? Only when a work has to be done in the body. And what is that work? To bring matter into direct contact with the Supreme. Because if he pours that Supreme light, the next level of consciousness onto human body, which human body will bear it? Even Sri Aurobindo at one point says, you carry on the work of transformation. Your body is better prepared. So the body of the divine, when it takes the avatar, is prepared in a special way. Because it has to bear the impact. It's a conscious birth. That is the difference between an evolutionary process and an involution of the divine taking a human body. When the divine assumes a human body, it's a conscious process. The entire universal nature prepares the body in such a way that it can be prepared for the next leap. That's how she describes as a child when she would want to cross a 15-feet long hall in one jump without running from behind. She does it almost with just one tiptoe at somewhere in the middle, and the next leap she's away. Because the body was prepared by those elements of nature. But yet it is a human body. So she has taken a material body. Often people ask, at least for me it is like that. Divine is wonderfully supreme, everything. But the divine become human is the mystery of mysteries. He is, if I may say so, greater than the supreme, paradoxical. But it is true that the Supreme becomes greater through his own creation. Manifestation takes place. All that is hidden inside him, or it or her, begins to take shape, and thereby he rediscovers himself through countless ways. So the avatar is regarded as the mystery of mysteries. And that's why in India there is a entire line. You may talk Vedanta, you may do everything and all the things you may do, but in the end people worship Rama and Krishna and the avatars, because the divine become human. So he says you must understand that she has come to bring something in the material world which could not be without her. Supreme can do it, but he has to take a human body to do it. Otherwise it cannot be done. And then he says, it is so that you should regard her as the divine Shakti working here for that purpose. At one place, the mother says that nothing else is worthy of Sri Aurobindo's help except to take up this work of transformation, to call him to change us from the human animal to a divine humanity of tomorrow. And that too not for any egoistic reason, but so that we can serve him better. She is that in the body, but in her whole consciousness, she is also identified with all the other aspects of the divine force. When we pray to Durga, the prayer reaches her and she responds. When somebody calls that mother, I am in distress, her universal consciousness spread out everywhere. And Sri Aurobindo said this. They said, mother is helping all these people. Does she remember? She says, then her brain will be cluttered. It is there in her universal consciousness. If she wants, she can recall it. There are countless examples of that, but not getting into it, make it too vast. In her universal consciousness, she is anyways acting upon the world. But in the body, she has taken form, assumed a human body for its transmutation. This is what we need to remember, that all these, we can take her as the universal mother, turn to her, all nature dumbly calls to her alone, to heal with her feet the aching throb of life, and break the seals on the dim soul of man, and kindle her fire in the closed heart of things. And when we know it, what should be our response? Very simply, in the same passage, all aims were lost in her, then found in her. All our aims are to satisfy the ego. It's aggrandizement. One way, even divine service becomes, I'm an instrument of the divine. I'm in this authority, that authority. All aims were lost in her, then found in her. Everything is only to serve her. And how to do that? His base was gathered in a one pointed spire. Let us make a bonfire. Auroville has on 28th this wonderful bonfire. Let us make a bonfire of our own being, where we completely burn away the past. What can be purified, let it be purified and emerge. Like Parvati emerging out of the yajna, Sati going in and Parvati emerging as the new creation. What needs to go away, let it go away without remorse. And thus, through this yajna, through this bonfire, let a new world be created right here in our midst by the grace and love of the Divine Mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. That was a very, very powerful message, or messages from the mother and her life, and very much appreciate it. And I think of this choice that you mentioned that we all have, right? The choice to follow the truth or the abyss, the choice to move forward and progress, or to stand still. It is a choice, and we forget sometimes. And so really kind of a great reminder, not only for that, but as you mentioned, the courage and the aspiration, the constant aspiration to move forward and for a new world going forward. So we very much appreciate your time, and I know you'll be joining Anu in a moment on this next talk also. Anu, who is with us here today, is going to be speaking on the charter of Auroville, and Auroville is a future role for the world. And Anu, as most of you know, have been part of the Auroville journey since 1979, starting out at the Matra construction site, where the process of unending education, she says, began. And she later worked as a dancer and choreographer with the Auro Dance Lab and has published 9 books that include poetry, fiction, The Infinity Adventures for Children, and Auroville, A City for the Future. So she has served Auroville's Town Development Council and is currently a member of its working committee. So Anne Legrand will introduce the topic again of the Charter of Auroville, and then she and Dr. Pandey will engage in a discussion concerning specific points of the Charter. And if at any point you have any questions for Anu or Dr. Pandey on this topic, please feel free to post them in the Q&A box. And given sufficient time, your questions will be addressed by them. So at this time, Anu, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Radhe. And first of all, I want to thank Dr. Alok Pandey for that marvelous introduction and, the exposition of what the mother means in this world. February 21st is, in a sense, our Mother's Day. And it is she who has given us this incredible dream to live. And we are so privileged to be this. Auroville is at the same time something very beautiful, very extraordinary, and very challenging in real time. And that is because, as Dr. Pandey was mentioning, it is because Auroville carries a certain destiny for the world. It carries the mother's dream, which is the dream of the transformation of humankind towards unity, towards beauty, towards a greater and higher consciousness. And the Auroville Charter, with which Auroville began and was written on the 28th of February, 1968, is a long story. It didn't just happen at random on that day. She actually wrote it on the 7th of February, which is about 21 days prior to the inauguration of Auroville. And it didn't come out of the blue. There was a very, very long preparation, and that preparation is exactly what Dr. Alok Pandey has described to us. And before she even came to India, it was sometime in the 1911, 1913, around that time, and she was, editing this 2 journals called the Nouvelle Idée, the New Idea, and the Cosmic. And in that, she mentions, that a kind of, a formula or a kind of, a formula for the future. Formula is the wrong word, anyway. And in that, she outlines 3 steps. The first is that humanity has to move towards a point of universal harmony. And this universal harmony has to come about through recognition and identity with the inner divine. And to accomplish that, she was actually thinking already of an ideal spot on earth somewhere. This was necessary. She was looking at the state of the world, the injustice, the war, the divisions, the hatred, all of that. And she said, if there was work to be done, this was it. This change had to be brought about. But this change could only come through with another power, and that power didn't exist. Had it been tried? Had somebody found it? So it was inevitable that her journey would lead her to Pondicherry, where she met Sri Aurobindo. And that work began with the 2 of them. Now, once she settled back in Pondicherry in 1920, because she was there for the first time in 1914, And when she came back in 1920 and set up and took charge of the ashram, and eventually Sri Aurobindo retreated after the Overmind descent. And at one point in 1931, someone asked her, so what is the work that you all are doing? And she says, the work which we are doing now is what Sri Aurobindo has called the supramental. And this work is the connection between the consciousness, the new consciousness, and the material being. And once this consciousness, touches the material being, it has to take an effect in the outward material life through a new form, starting with a model town. So this is in 1931. And this work was, let's say, gathering much intensity. If you read Sri Aurobindo's autobiographical notes, the notes he's writing to in response to the letters which are coming, and he would sometimes say, I've got it by the tail. He's talking about the supramental. I have it by the tail, but I don't see its head. And they were actually waiting for this descent to happen. But then what happened is that the Second World War intervened. And somehow their entire attention went there. And he said, if the totalitarian powers win, then there's no hope for this descent to happen and for the evolution of the world and of humanity to take place. So this has to be taken care of first. It has to be moved out. So we don't hear about any plans for the city for a long time. And then in 1954, the mother is talking about new forms are needed to manifest new force. And she writes the dream, the same thing that Radhe read out. There should be somewhere upon earth a place. So in 1956, we know about the descent of the supramental consciousness. What is interesting is that up to then, the city was not spoken about. It was going to be based on the consciousness. So as soon as that happens, we hear of her starting to look for a piece of land. Where can I place this ideal town in an ideal country? And then the land is found. And then the first thing she does is to look for an architect. And she gives him the description of her vision. She gives him the outline. She keeps working with him until she is satisfied. And that takes another 3 years. So that is the point when the charter is written. So the plan is sort of approved in January, and about 10 days, 14 days later, she writes the charter. So what does this charter say? So the first thing it says, Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole, but to live in Auroville, one must be the willing servitor of the divine consciousness. So that is the little catch which all of us have to understand, and which Arnabji so beautifully explained. The purpose, it's actually not even a condition, it is a purpose. To realize this experiment, you have to make that step to be that willing servitor. That is almost the key. Because one is in front of not something ordinary, not something mundane, but one has to deal with this consciousness. And only then is it possible for it to contain, and for all of us who are here to contain the whole world. The interesting thing about that first line, to be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness, is that actually it is pointing to a kind of governance. Who governs Auroville? Ultimately, it is the divine. It is totally in the hands of the divine. we have in the world there, because most cities are not born with a charter, but Auroville is. And in the world nowadays, you hear of things called the charter cities. And what does that mean? It usually means that a particular city is started with a certain set of understanding, which pertains to governance, and which is not beholden to completely to the laws of the land, but it has certain things which are recognized. Now, our governance lies in the hands of the divine. And for this to be accomplished, you need the next step of the charter, which says Auroville will be a place of an unending learning, of constant progress, and a youth that never ages. It is because the consciousness itself, to come in contact with that, you need what the mother called, and what Sri Aurobindo talks about in the supramental manifestation, the identity with that consciousness, that identity or that unity of the divine with the divine. So to build that up, you have to be in a state of fluidity, of openness, of being able to learn, of being able to grow at every level, at every stage, and it's unending. And it is to, let's say, forge in the being that receptivity to the consciousness, the receptivity to that other form or other reception of knowledge. And once these two steps are there, we come to the third one, which is talking about the leap towards the future. That Auroville will take the step from the past and the future, the knowledge from the past and the future. And it will spring boldly towards future realizations. So one must realize that the preceding 3 years, she was constantly concerned about the way the city was emerging, the way it was panning out, every little detail to it. So this is that step towards the future that she was looking at. And what was this future? What was the future that the divine consciousness would create? So that is where the first point and the last point come together. So she talks about Auroville will be a place of research into matter and spirit, to arrive at an actual human unity, for that realization. So there is one point, when she's talking about what the new consciousness wants is no more divisions. It is when the extreme inner consciousness and the extreme materiality manage to meet together that a new force emerges. And that is the force, in a sense, of Auroville, because this is a consciousness which doesn't leave you only to meditate. It is a consciousness which wants to build cities, it wants to plant forests, it wants to create all kinds of activities, it wants to create a new humanity, a new culture. So this is an active force of consciousness. Now, when we look at the city, which this consciousness is meant to build, we see that she actually, through the plan that she gave the architect, she actually created a map of an integral human growth. So there is the 4 aspects of the city. We have the residential, the cultural, the industrial, and the international, in which a person can grow in any way. You're not limited to any one area of growth. You can grow to a maximum in a certain part of Auroville. You can move to another part and see that growth of your inner being and your outer being.
and your way to serve the manifestation of a city, why did it have to be a city at all? That is also a very interesting point, that when we look at the inauguration of Auroville, you have this charter being read in all the languages of the world and of India. And the earth of all the different states and the different countries of the world poured into the urn, and inside the urn, they all mingle with the Charter of Auroville. So this charter was not written just for itself. As people came into the amphitheater on that morning of 28th of February, they were actually greeted with a huge image of the city plan. So when people went past that and they went and sat in the amphitheater, this city was dedicated for a much greater and higher purpose of humanity, in which the Aurovillian is a willing servitor. What can the Aurovillian do in that city as he or she grows, as a child grows? So the other thing, like, why did the mother choose a city? A city is where you have a certain conglomeration of people, where people meet, where a certain critical mass is created. And she actually wanted 50,000. I found that very interesting. She said 50,000 would be like the critical mass, which would be needed to work on all types of human beings. So that message which we have for today about the mother, which Sri Aurobindo wrote, she had come here to manifest that body. And this is a work which is being done. The body for the soul, literally. So let me just say that the difficulties are there, because we are stepping into unknown territory. Nobody has actually done this adventure. When she said, I invite you to the great adventure, and the path is unknown, there may be hazards, but at the end, the victory is certain. So this is, I think, the journey we are all on. The challenges are immense at certain times, but so are the gifts. So is the grace. And I would just say that we can hold on to that grace today, especially, and take ourselves forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anu. And I just wanted to mention that Dr. Pandey does have another commitment and will be needing to leave here in a few moments. Before you leave, Dr. Pandey, is there anything that you would like to comment on regarding the Auroville's charter or Anu's talk?
So two things which come spontaneously is, one of them is that Auroville is a formation, and though seen from this angle, it is of course an adventure, because human consciousness has to move from ignorance towards knowledge. But seen from the other angle, Auroville is a formation. The mother spoke about it, that even as a child she had this formation of this Auroville, and then he left it there, and then later on the architect Roger, he picked it up, and that's how. So it is something which is pressing upon mankind to realize itself. And once, that's what she meant by saying it's a dream of the divine, meaning thereby it has not entered into that realizing phase. I mean, dream of the divine when it was just being built, but it's a formation. So whether we like it or not, there is already an Auroville which exists in this subtle world, and it is this Auroville which will realize itself whether we like it or not. Now what we have to do is to align ourselves more and more to this divine formation rather than to our own individual wills. So when we read this very interesting word, again this sentence in the charter, or this necessity of being a willing servitor of the divine, because it's only when we become a willing servitor of the divine. Now the word willing is very interesting, because everybody is an instrument of the divine, the whole universe is an instrument of the divine, but being a willing servitor of the divine is to tune our will to the divine will. It's not about my ideas, my opinions, my viewpoint. There'll be plenty, each one has their own. That's a different kind of world order. But what is it that the divine wants of us? Not as a kind of fixed format. So she gave a formation, and why she did not spell out everything is so that human will can tune itself to the divine will. So I found this part which is important to understand. So people have to engage in yoga. To be a willing servitor means to practice equanimity. It means to do nishkam karma. It means that, inwardly I live in a state of remembrance of the divine, and it's not my idea, but to manifest the divine idea upon earth. Just as an aside, there was once a discussion going on about celebration of India's 50th independence, way back, 25 years back. And a very erudite scholar, learned person, he said toward the end of all the discussion, he said, we want to realize the India of our dreams. And I couldn't help but correct him. And I said, correct him in the sense that, sir, we want to realize the India of Sri Aurobindo's dreams. However high my dreams may be, they are still human dreams. So I can align my dreams to the divine dreams. So this where the trick lies, that I dream what the divine dreams. So that would be wonderful. But it's not about me and you or X or Y, but the divine dream. Not in a kind of despotic way, though the divine, as the mother said at one point, is a benevolent dictator. So this is one part of it. Second part, which I find very interesting, is about the whole idea of democracy with which human beings have toyed in the rational cycle. So the mother describes a very interesting vision where she sees Sri Aurobindo playing with a ball, and the ball has become very worn out and old. And then Sri Aurobindo smiles like a child, tells her, this has grown old, can you get me a new one? And the mother says, smiles and says, this ball is democracy. And if read through all this charter, she has further and further explained, because when she said Auroville belongs to nobody in particular, but to humanity in general. So people had this idea initially that human beings can come and do anything which they like, because it belongs to humanity. But then she had to introduce this, you have to be a willing servitor. Humanity itself belongs to the divine. The earth belongs to the divine. So this second aspect was, she gave this idea of a kind of, I think it was mentioned very interestingly, about a hierarchy, the true hierarchy. It doesn't yet exist, but it is going to come into being. She said, as the new consciousness grows, a true hierarchy will come. And it is not an arbitrary structure. It's not a man-made structure. It is not based on anything which is outward, but it's the true inner hierarchy. And who are the people who are ready for true governance, who are completely inwardly like a sannyasi? They are not attached to anything, not even to ideas and opinions, but to something much vaster. They are open to that vaster, luminous inner plastic guidance. That is the second part. And the third thing which I felt very interesting, when I think I don't mind, being very clear on certain things. When all this thing was going on about Auroville city plan and all this, so obviously you can't remain completely outside the whole thing. So I just have been asking this, that is this kind of like dynamic race part of the original plan? Leave aside everything else. But very simply, it is a yantra. It is, like a symbol. And this symbol is like the rays of the divine dynamically going around. It's, if I have to use a mystic symbol, it's Sudarshan Chakra. And if I have to use a material symbol, it's galaxy. Now, these formations, I spoke about the formations and this kind of a whirling spiral. This is a divine action. Symbols cannot be distorted. Like when Hitler had distorted the symbol just a little, it would have been a human being. Even now, people say that it's nothing but a swastik. Many people thought that, he is doing nothing. He's making a swastik. He was not making a swastik, but by little bit tweaking it, it became the sign of an adverse force. So when as human beings, I would say only one thing: we are playing with immense forces in this creation, which have come into, which have started pushing human beings, because now Auroville means that there will be end of the possibility of war. And I see this conflict in, Auroville, Ashram, the larger groups in mankind, as the forces which are trying to once again bring back the old reign. See, that's how, world comes on the brink of war. And what is the way to really avoid it is to help in the building of Auroville. How to help in the building of Auroville? It's not those man-made structures. It's not by the human mind and its limited intelligence. But there is a by and large a basic plan which is given, thankfully, to us by the divine. And then from there, we have to tune our consciousness, renounce our own little, selfish interest, our little viewpoints, opinions, and then we have to participate in this great adventure as a collectivity. When people differ, there are two ways to arrive at a unifying point. One is to reach such an apex of consciousness where we can find a synthesis. And the second is by tuning ourselves to the original, to the center. That center is the divine. The city that needs, it's not about me, that person, this group, that group. It is the need of the city. It's about humanity. It's about, divine manifestation in humanity. So these are some of the things which come to me spontaneously from the Auroville Charter, that this plan of Auroville is a yantra. It's a formation. It's a like mother symbol. And one cannot, really play with the symbol, because it means one is pushed by the forces of a certain kind. And I must say that while we as human beings may not understand their impact as of now, but even unwittingly to become an instrument of something which is distorting something which is divine is very dangerous. I can only quote this instance that while Subhash Chandra Bose, the great Indian leader, nationalist leader, he was shaking arms with Japan and Germany. People were so happy. Look here is come the Redeemer, who is going to save India from the British. What did Sri Aurobindo and the mother had to say about it? He said he is bringing in the adverse forces right into the heart of India. If Nazi Germany from one side and Japan from the other side had to invade India at that point of time, it would be finishing our work or pushing it back by 10,000 years. So we must be very, very, very careful which side are we really, standing, and which side means that basically on the side of not right or wrong, but on the side of the divine, being a willing servitor to execute the divine plan, to fulfill the divine will in man. In this alone lies divine's, human wisdom, ultimate human wisdom, and in this alone lies safety and the smooth journey in this great adventure. But if we take the other course, wherein we are just worried about our own little things, our ideas, viewpoints, opinions, and not what the divine has planned and willed for man, then we are basically meddling with immense forces and creation. That's all I can say. And we should be very, very careful, individuals as well as groups, men, countries, continents. The choice is imperative: truth or the abyss. So one should live by that truth. That truth she has revealed very clearly. I had no ambiguity when you read what she has spoken about Auroville. The question is whether we are ready to live it or not. That each one has to answer within oneself. Yeah, this is just my little.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. It comes back again to the choice that you mentioned early on for each of us. So thank you so much. I know you have a previous commitment. We are so appreciative of you being here today and sharing with us some Mother's life and her messages and your thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Anu, we are coming to a close on the program here, but would love if perhaps you could just say a few more words about this charter. We do have one question here that perhaps you could address. The question is, can you shed some light about what an Aurovilian's schedule is? Thought I read substantial time should be devoted to growth of consciousness. If that's something you could maybe address or comment on.
There's no separation with, life and work and the growth of consciousness. Actually, it is through work, through action, that the mother spoke of that she felt that she didn't believe that there was any separation. And it was through work, through action, that the consciousness would have to grow. So that is also a level of an inner, let's say, development that was being called for. We are not at that stage of perfection, but very much it is definitely something that we need to accept, that is how the growth of our lives and the growth of the spiritual work will happen. It will not happen in separation. That's what she said, what I mentioned before, that she saw no division, that the new consciousness does not accept any division between spiritual life and material life. And that's the final part of the Auroville Charter. Of course, she gave us the mechanism. This is one thing I forgot to mention, that when she was writing the Auroville Charter on 7th of February, and she says, I'm not saying anything about citizens, nothing of that kind. What I'm saying is that to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor. So she was not interested in the usual pattern of democracy and how we refer to ourselves. She wanted willing servitors. And then she says, the divine consciousness means Matri Mandir at the center. It's not being said here, but that's what it means. Even if people don't like it, that's what it means. So in a sense, she put her force there. So everything in Auroville is contained in that form, contained in that symbolic force. So I fully agree with what Dr. Alok Pandey just mentioned about that we need to accept and work with it and not tamper with it. Because, even when we built the Matri Mandir, for example, that is something that she saw very clearly, every aspect of that inner chamber. And again, it was symbolic, and we didn't question that. Whatever went in the 12 pillars, the shape of the room, the color, whatever had to be there. So, yeah, I think I digressed. Other questions?
Yeah, well, I think what we'll do at this point, because we are coming pretty close to the close, we have other questions. But what we would like to do is go ahead and catalog those questions. You'll be with us the rest of the week. And should we have some time towards the end or opening of another program, then we'll direct those questions to you. So we would like to, and we do appreciate everybody joining us today. And Anu, thank you so very much for such an inspiring as well as very sincere talk on the Auroville Charter. Very much appreciated. And I'd just like to remind everyone that not tomorrow, but Wednesday will be the next evening webinar. And that webinar will be on Savitri, Cradle of the Overman. And Vladimir Yatsenko and Don Solomon, both here from the US, as you know, will be speaking on that. So we hope you can join us. We'll all be sending out another poster for your registration. And we will like to, please stay with us for a few minutes. We would like to close with a group meditation.
चैतन्यमयी सा परमे ॐ आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी 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 परमे
Thank you all again for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for being here, H.P. Rama, Anu, Dr. Pandey, and Aurelio for opening with such a beautiful invocation for the rest of this week. Please join us again on Wednesday, and happy Darshan Day. Namaste.